Now it is. All right, I'd like to go ahead and call to order this special city council meeting of Thursday, November 18th. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Holly, will you call the roll, please?
Bellinger.
Here.
Seabolt.
Here.
Rhines.
Here.
Gilroy.
Here.
Hanson. Lanyon.
Present.
Pratt.
Here.
All right, we did receive notification that Councilman Hanson was not able to be here. I would entertain a motion to excuse his absence.
Motion to approve, Mr. Hanson.
All right, do I have support?
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And now I'm looking for approval of this evening's agenda.
So moved.
Thank you. Do I have support?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we have an opportunity for audience participation, maximum of 5 minutes per presentation. I do not see anybody in our gallery, so I'll move right along. We have our city manager interview this evening, and we have our candidate here, David Rowley. So David, if you'd like to go ahead and come on up, have a seat at the table.
All right, thank you very much.
Absolutely, pleased to have you here. What we'll do is we'll do some introductions, and then I'll just kind of explain how tonight will proceed.
Sure.
So my name's Tammy Gilroy. I'm the mayor. Did I do that right? Tuesday I stumbled a little because I've just had city manager, interviews and stuff in my head for about 2 weeks. But I've been mayor since January of 2017. Been on council since November of 2015. And I did it because I just wanted to serve my city and give back to the community that I've grown up in. I'm fourth generation living here in town.
Wonderful.
And so I'll go ahead and go right to my right.
My name's Bill Bellinger. Many years of experience looking at city council. 12, 13, 14 plus years.
Okay.
Have lived in Williamston for about 37 years. All my children have gone to school here, and it's great, and I'm here to serve the community.
Brian Lanyon, I've been on council for about a year now. Not as extensive as a resume as them. We're a new family to the community. We moved in 4 years ago, but we wanted to contribute and give back.
Hi David, I'm Tom Pratt.
My pleasure.
Lived here my whole life, been on city council for 1 year, same reasoning, felt the need to give back to my community.
I'm Chuck Seabolt. I moved back to town here about 4 years ago, and new to the city council here in the last couple of weeks.
Oh, okay. I saw there was a vacancy,
Yes.
and it's like, okay, very good, very good.
I'm Dan Rhines, been on city council for 3-4 years, grew up here, and just wanted to be involved with the city and give back to town.
Wonderful.
Great. And then we do have one council member that is absent due to illness, and he thought best just to continue resting up, and we certainly appreciate that.
Appreciate that, yes.
So what we're going to do this evening, we've got 22 questions. I will start out, we'll do round robin, so each of us will be asking questions. It'll take about 45 minutes, and then at the end you'll have an opportunity to ask questions for us, and then I'll explain the process moving forward.
Very good.
All right. So again, welcome. Thank you for being here this evening, David. We appreciate it. What skills and abilities do you have in creating, updating, and implementing strategic plans and community vision? What is your depth of experience in working on master plans? And with any of these questions, if you need them repeated, and
Sure.
please let us know and feel free to take your time.
Sure. My most relevant experience for this position is my career with the city of Mount Pleasant. I was with the city for 21 years. And I worked very closely with our planning department, also our economic development, community development. The city was in the process of discussing the master plan and doing some implementation or some changes as I was getting ready to leave. So I had a little bit of input in that before I left. I did speak with the city planner several times after that because when I left the city, I went to Michigan State University Extension. And so that career led to teaching classes in planning, zoning, land use, community development. So I went from a practical, hands-on experience in a governmental setting, the city of Mount Pleasant, to that of an educational environment of actually going around the state of Michigan to units of government across the state, city, townships, and counties, and teaching those various things that you're talking about. Whether we're talking master plan, land use, land division, any of those types of programs. So at the city, technically I was classified as the city assessor, as a department head, but Mount Pleasant was more of a matrix kind of an organization, that you had certain jobs and certain roles that you're obligated to do, obviously. But if you look at my resume, you'll see detailed experiences in other avenues and other activities, such as the Neighborhood Resource Unit and City Election Commission and so on, so things like that expanded that experience. So basically, we looked at a variety of programs and took those from beginning to end. So in other words, we changed the focus of the city from that of being strictly a silo type organization into one of the organizational development that was more of a team approach. And so that's really where a lot of that strategic planning came into effect. I was asked to chair that, and it was about a 3-year process from beginning to end. Actual vision, implementation, evaluation, and now it's just a matter of way that the city does business.
All right, thank you so much.
Okay. What experiences do you have with economic development activities while being sensitive to the community concerns and goals? Give us examples of successes and any disappointments.
In Mount Pleasant, I worked on several economic development. Some of them were smaller than others. Some were based on brownfields. Some were based on OPRAs, the Obsolete Property Rehabilitation Act. And one of the successes was that we were able to take the old city administration building that had been built in the 1920s and through a OPRA, worked with the developer and developed that into office space. So it was completely remodeled and into office space. It had been basically an obsolete facility at that particular time. The largest project was what was called Project 2000. This was development of 300 acres, roughly, of land on the southeast corner of the city. It was land actually that was annexed into the city from Union Township, and it was all vacant at that particular time. The process developed into, well, first off, there was a need study that was done to determine that we needed additional housing. We also needed additional industrial space, we needed additional commercial space, and we also needed connector roads going east and west. Because if you had an emergency, police, fire, ambulance down in the southeast corner of the community, there was only 2 ways to get there. And so we needed connector roads to do that, to expand on that public safety aspect. But Project 2000 developed into residential properties, condominiums, senior citizen, multifamily. The county health department is there now. The state police post in Mount Pleasant is there. A strip mall, just all kinds of various types of projects that took place. The interesting thing that I will just add as a footnote to that whole process was very, very large and very complex, obviously. But the interesting thing about it, and the thing that's the most unique, is that process created a benefit to every other unit of government in the state of Michigan. And why I say that is Project 2000 was challenged as the development of it was challenged as being not a public purpose within meaning of the statute. Therefore, it actually was appealed to the Board of Review and then to the Michigan Tax Tribunal. Then it went to the Michigan Court of Appeals, and then subsequently it went to the Michigan Supreme Court. It was a very long process, and I was involved in the process from the tribunal through the Supreme Court end of it. And basically the reason I'm saying this is that the Supreme Court gave us a roadmap of what is public purpose within meaning of the statute. So that if Williamston wants to develop land, you have now a roadmap. Clearly, if you follow this, you are in compliance with what the courts have said the public purpose means in the statute. So it was a very important case. And you can go there today and see literally this development there. And lastly, there was an industrial park that was developed, which created many hundreds of jobs and different types of facilities out there, electric companies, and there's a taxidermy out there. And Frito-Lay is out there as well, the distribution center for mid-Michigan. So it was a huge, huge project.
Thank you.
All right, how do you approach working with citizen groups, neighborhood associations, or other groups that have an interest in local government?
I encourage all of those types of organizations to attend, whether it's meetings, formal meetings or impromptu, but to get their views as to what it is they see as the nature of their neighborhood. In Mount Pleasant, we had several organizations. The one that was the most active was the Southwest Neighborhood Association. We also worked with organizations like that to develop mini grants, so that if there was a specific project for a neighborhood improvement, that there was actually grant money that was available, funded through the city, that these organizations could apply for. And we partnered with organizations like that to solve some of the problems that they were seeing. One of the big issues that they had was deer. The deer had intruded into that particular area. Some of the larger homes in town are down there, a little bit more expensive homes, a little bit more landscaping. So there's a lot of vegetation. Naturally, that just attracted the deer. You can imagine property owners spending several thousands of dollars in landscaping were not necessarily thrilled when the deer were destroying it. So we worked with the neighborhood association to work on culling the deer herd. Very, very rigid procedures in order to do that, but that went over very well. And lastly, there's a West Side Association in Mount Pleasant that is comprised of people that kind of like grew up there. This is a homecoming kind of thing where they do things on an annual basis. So if you ever lived in West Town, come on home, and we have block parties and things like that, and come back and be part of the community for the benefit. So encourage a lot of citizen participation, absolutely.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Done here. How do you evaluate the performance of department heads in the activities for which they have responsibility?
First off, you need to establish clear objectives at the beginning of the year. So you sit down with the department head and you have that conversation, and the goals and objectives of that particular department and that particular person are spelled out so that there's agreement right up front. So if you have any questions, well, what does that mean? Then you have that conversation so that it's clear. And then you'll have additional conversations throughout the year if you see something that might not be as timely as it should. So the whole point, in my view, with the performance evaluation is that at the end of the year, when you actually have that formal evaluation, this isn't something that's there to correct the problem. You should already have corrected the problem as you're going through. That this is to have that conversation with the department head to say, okay, we had 5 goals, and you did 4 of them very well. They were timely, they were on point, you know, resources were there, staff was there, everything was done. But number 5 didn't work so well. And remember, we had to talk about a couple of things throughout the course of the year. And so what we want to do is we want to learn from that, and we want to expand on that so we do a better job of going forward. And also determine what was the nature of why they were out of balance with it or out of sync with it. Was something that was foreseeable? Was it something that was unforeseeable? I've seen several times where the reason the department wasn't able to accomplish something is that there was a retirement that they didn't know about that was coming. There was an illness that took a key staff member out of place for a period of time. And to be fair, in another case, it was the department head who just simply didn't bother to say, I need additional help. And they got behind, and then, as I'm sure you're well aware, in certain situations, once it gets behind, it's a little bit harder to bring it back in. So have that good open communication right from day one, get it in writing. I mean, this isn't a contract, but an expectation, so a clear expectation.
Thank you.
Please relate your experience in developing a community's identity. What programs and activities had a beneficial impact on developing a sense of community? Examples: Michigan Main Street redevelopment ready community.
Mount Pleasant, we did kind of a rebranding with the city. The city, as I said, had a lot of silos to it in the old days. You know, we're going back 25, 30 years ago. And the whole idea with the organizational development program was to get that community focused, so that people, when they came into the community and they came into the city, they knew that everybody was part of the same team, same organization. One of the pieces of that was that regular meetings were held, and I say regular, they might be monthly, they might be quarterly, depending on the nature of them. But regular meetings were held so that everybody that had direct contact with the public knew what other organizations or other entities within the city were doing. So in other words, my staff, when they were out in the field doing their job, if they were approached by a member of the public and asked a question about why the streets tore up 2 blocks over, they had an answer. It's not that we're going to tell them in minute detail like the street department could, but they had a basic understanding. This is what's going on because now you've got the public asking you questions. And everyone was wearing the same city logo shirt. So you had that team focus on it as well. That was huge. That was very huge because it went from them and us to we, and even the public got to see that. Logos were changed. City Hall changed. City Hall itself physically moved. Part of it was space, but part of it was we didn't want to lose the historic building. It was the 1907 Board and Creamery building. And so that was put together in several layers of funding to redevelop that into office space. And so today that's 3 condominiums. City Hall is one, there's one vacant, and the other one is the State Supreme Court office for mid-Michigan. So you had that sense of purpose, that sense of Mount Pleasant, that was different than it had been because, as they say, it was the silo. Because in the old days prior to that, if you had asked like a public works person, you know, they're out working on the streets, well, I just got a letter from the city that said the assessor's going to be coming around and to do field work. What's that all about? They said, I don't know, call the assessor. Well, that's not public service. You know, I don't expect them to explain why the assessor's there or how they're doing it, but they need to have that understanding. And so that was kind of the sense of purpose that we did.
All right, thank you.
Describe your experience in managing municipal finances. Give us an example or two of innovative productivity improvements or cost savings you have proposed and their outcomes.
With the city, I was the part of developing 21 city budgets. And some were easier than others, as we all know. The biggest problem that we had was the year that personal property was being phased out, the beginning year that was being phased out. If you were here at the time in government, you may recall that the state of Michigan did not tell us that ahead of time. So we were planning, we were working on our budget. So the process that we used was that each department had submitted their request to the city manager and finance director for their annual budget allocation and expenses for the programs that they were working on. I did the revenue, the property tax forecasting every year for the city. The treasurer did the bond projections. She also did the state revenue sharing. So she did that piece of it. And together we would sit down and come up with what's our best estimate going forward of revenue coming into the year. And then we would provide that information to the city commission. And once the budget requests are then put in, then there's a sit down with the city manager, the finance director, and the various department heads, and they go through literally the applications that are being applied. You know, what are you funding? Are you adding new programs or you're not adding new programs? One of the things that we were able to do is the city did not have a departmental fund balance. Fund balance went back and it was general fund overall. So at the end of the year, any funds that were left over went back into the general fund. We were able to work with the city commission and other departments to establish a quasi-fund balance department-wide, and ad hoc, maybe that's a better word to use. And what I mean by that is, if you had a project that was approved, but for some unforeseeable reason, it was not completely done at the end of the year. Those funds traditionally would have gone back to the general fund. But through this process, there's an application to be made. You could carry those forward into the next year to finish the project. Prior to that, it didn't happen. And so you've got a project halfway through, and now you've lost the rest of your funding because it went back into fund balance. Okay, so that caused some issues, and there were some other procedures there that needed to be resolved in that way. But the ad hoc concept was there. We were able to do quality projections based on the rate of inflation that's determined from the Department of Treasury. It just came out, so it's 3.3% for this next year. So what we would track that every year and provide that projection. And generally, like in this year, it was 3.3. Our projection probably would have been based on how the numbers were calculated. We would have estimated, I'm sure, somewhere around 3. So we would be somewhere in the 0.1, 0.2, 0.3 range of being on target. And we did that for years. So there's good forecasting models.
If a situation were to ever come about where you became privately involved in a business in Williamston, such as being an owner or part owner, how would you make sure to keep your duties as city manager and private business owner separate?
Well, for one, the council would have to be informed of that. There's full disclosure is my understanding of how that works. It's that your primary job is the city manager's role, so anything outside of that. And also I would, if that was me personally, I would more than likely hire someone to take care of that for me. Keep it completely separate so that I'm not involved in the day-to-day operations of that, the day-to-day business operations of that. My wife ran a small store in Mount Pleasant. I wasn't part of that. I was a city official. I was not part of that. It was her store. It was in her name. It was her lease. She took care of everything. Obviously, I helped her when that was needed, but it wasn't anything that I had full control over by any stretch.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are you more of a leader or a manager? Describe for us how you exemplify the best of that quality.
Mm-hmm. Leader, you lead by example. You do not ask anyone to do something that you would not do yourself. And I've tried to follow that in my entire career. The one thing that has always bothered me personally during our pandemic is the term essential worker. They're all essential. I personally do not know of a job that is not essential. If it wasn't essential, we wouldn't be paying someone to do it. So every position, whether you're talking in a city government, you're talking the elected officials, you're talking the city manager, you're talking the department head, or you're talking about the intern you hired yesterday. Every one of those people is important in that organization, and they need to have the respect of that particular organization and that particular person. The management side is basically enabling the person and the staff to do the job that they've been expected to do, making sure that they have the resources that they need, they have the proper budget that they need, they have the proper training that they need. I've seen it in my career, because I've traveled across the state. Also, if you look at my resume, I was president of the Michigan Assessors Association, so I had contact with many other units of government, not just my own. And I can see from experience that many units of government did not fully enable their employees and then tried to hold them accountable to a standard that they didn't support. They weren't given the proper training, they weren't given the proper equipment, they weren't given the proper tools. It's like, well, then why is your production down? Well, your production is down because the unit of government didn't support the employee and then criticize the employee for it. So that's something in my career that I've always tried to avoid, that you give the employee the adequate training, the adequate resources and tools to do the job, and when necessary, you help them out. You know, we're all part of the same team. The logo is as we did in Mount Pleasant, and we talked about it in our team meetings. The logo is the same. There's no logo for a staff member or the department head or the city manager. It's the city logo. It's all the same, and that's the thing. You're part of that larger team, and that's your main focus.
All right, what do you see as our strengths as a community, and how do you plan on building on them?
From what I understand, Williamston is a growing community. To be fair, I've not been here a lot in the last recent time. I was here originally. Actually, my very first job was in Williamstown Township, so it's kind of ironic that I'm sitting here tonight. I was part of the assessing revaluation of 1989 that took place way back when. I worked for a company that was hired to do that consulting work, so this was really one of my first positions that I held. It's grown a lot over those years that I've seen. It is from what I know of it, it's a very tight-knit community, a very well-established community, and from what I've found, the information, to be fair, the information's been a little limited to try and sort through all of that. But it does seem to be on good financial footing, and that's important. You can tell a lot by a community is how is its millage rate functioning? You know, are you at your maximum, or you have some room to adjust? You know, what kind of fund balance do you have? So I think there's a good solid foundation for the community, and the people that I've met here in Williamston bear that out as well. They enjoy where they are, and they're supportive from what I've been able to see.
Thank you.
Okay. What are our weaknesses, and how do you plan to overcome them?
I think our weaknesses in Williamston is that, which is normal for any community, is that we're small. We're a small community, and we need to be careful of allocating resources wisely, because they're limited. They're limited. And you have to be careful that you have adequate staff, but not abundant staff. In other words, you want to make sure that you have enough people to do the job, but on the same token, you can't short it, because there might be a budget issue in some way, shape, or form. And as I say, this is common in many small communities. You just, because your resources are limited. You have a good tax base, but it's not. It has its limits. It has its limits. Also, I don't know, to be fair, I don't know exactly, but one thing that I've seen in governments that are weaknesses, and I'd have to check it out here, but has the community made use of all of the economic development tools that are available? I've mentioned some before, the Oprahs, the brownfields. What is the plan for the ARPA funds? Is there a committee in place right now? Is there discussion going on for the ARPA money that's coming in? If there isn't, then that would be, I would have a suggestion that be something that the city looked at. And if there is, that's wonderful, because I know there's many communities that look at it and it's like, I don't want to be part of the federal government oversight, and they're just backing off. And with all due respect to those governments, they're not seeing the opportunity that's there. You can partner with others. That's the other, I would have to investigate that as well, to see what's the nature of our partnerships. How many units of government have we partnered with? Do we have any authorities that we can partner with on different projects?
Thank you.
What do you see as the most critical problem facing the city of Williamston?
Right now, I think that you have a situation that is similar to some other communities, that you want to maintain your small town feel. You want to maintain your small town, the positive things that go along with that, but on the same token, provide the most adequate services and most expansive services for the community, for the citizens that you possibly can. And no matter how well you do that, you are still going to have a group of people that are going to give some pushback to it. We like it exactly like it is, okay? Now, I don't know if that's happened here, But I do know of a small community up north, when the McDonald's came in, some people were opposed. Seriously, they were opposed because we don't want that here. We want the little small town cafe mom and dad have down the street. Now you brought in a corporation, we don't want that. Okay, so there's that balance that's there, that's always going to be there. And so you've got to find that fine line where you can give that I don't want to say urbanization because that's too strong, but you want to provide more and bigger services to your citizens, but at the same time find that balance so you don't lose what you have. You don't lose what that small town feel and the importance of that. The great example, as you walk in, you have the Civil War soldier standing guard over City Hall. Okay, it's that you don't see in the big cities. Okay, as simple as that may sound, I'm an amateur historian, and that's one of the reasons why I notice things like that. But that represents a simpler time and a smaller community time, and that's what some people are attracted to. So they want some of that. If you really want the big city, East Lansing's not that far down the road. So this is where that balance comes in.
Thank you.
What is the most important skill or talent a manager can have when it comes to a council-manager relationship success? And please tell us about a time when you needed to use that talent to build or improve relationships.
Good open communication, absolutely, without question. The city council has the right to come and speak to the manager at any time, and likewise the manager should have the right to come and speak to the council. Because you are two sides of the same coin. The elected officials, the governing body, obviously set policy, but the manager will implement that policy and offer recommendation. So any recommendation that is given, the council can, as you well know, accept as presented, decline as presented, or modify, or send it back and ask for more information. So that good open communication that's there. The time that was the most challenging was my township that I worked in. Actually, it wasn't the city, it was the township. And the township board there was very challenging to work with for the main reason they did not have a clear understanding of what their role was. They were good people, but all of them were new to government. All of them were new to government. And they wanted to do a good job, but they had a different view of what each role was. And the point I'm making is the gentleman who was elected township supervisor took the word literally, as you would in a business model. I am the supervisor, so therefore I will give you instructions. Well, no, Mr. Supervisor, you're one elected official just like the other four. You're all equal. You can't tell an elected official what to do as another elected official. And that was one of the things we had to sit down and have a good discussion. And the clerk actually asked me to moderate that because she was having a very difficult time trying to convince this gentleman that you're not the boss. That's not what supervisor means in this regard. You have duties, absolutely, but you're not the supervisor of all the other departments. And so that it took a little while, but to be fair to the gentleman, he finally, it's like, okay, I get it, and actually offered an apology to the other members and said, you know, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. And to be fair to the man, he was born and raised in Mississippi, and that's where he spent a good chunk of his life. So Michigan government was a new thing for him. I mean, he lived in Detroit for a number of years, but the city. This was his first experience in a township.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Right, we're about halfway through.
Okay.
What tools and techniques have you used to keep the community informed and engaged with what's going on in their local government? How do you know if it's working as well as it can be? And examples would be city webpage, social media, or news outlets.
Yeah. The city, my experience has been, social media is a critical tool if it's used well, that you can keep information out. Some of the other ones, not so much, but Facebook is still a good tool to do that. You should have a professional type of page. It should be monitored. It should be monitored, to be fair, on a daily basis. There should be some type of a newsletter. In my experience, what I found to be most effective is the listserv. So in other words, there is a document that's prepared, and depending on the policy decision, it can be more of a snippet that's, you know, maybe a half a page or a page, or it could be a full-blown 3, 4, 5, 6 page document. But it's a listserv from the standpoint that the general public would sign up for it. So they would make the decision, I want to receive this on a regular basis. I do not believe it's appropriate for a unit of government to go out and find mailing lists and just start sending it to people, especially emails. Let the public sign up and ask to be sent this information. Then it should be sent out on a periodic basis. Periodic may be weekly, it may be bi-weekly, maybe monthly, depending on what it is. You might want to do a quarterly newsletter that's really substantial, and then do a smaller one, maybe on a monthly basis, where there is several issues that maybe are coming before the city council that you want the public to have input on, or something along those lines. Paper newsletters you can still use, and maybe offer that, because to be fair to our citizens, there are still some people who are not comfortable in a computer environment. So maybe make that an option, that you would like to sign up for a listserv electronically, or do it through a mailing. There would be some cost in that, but I can't believe it would be a substantial cost, because most people are going to want it electronically. But I know people in my generation, we don't always use electronics. My kids tweet rather than call. So it's like, I want to hear your voice, you know, talk to me. The other thing that I would just add to that is the city's webpage. That must be kept as current as possible, because people will go to that and they'll grab that type of information. It's very disheartening as a citizen to go to a city page or a township page or a county page, and you click on it and the last minutes posted was from 2015. I've seen that. Or there was a huge issue posted on the main page, and you read it and it's like, yeah, that was 4 years ago, that was a big deal. So it's got to be kept current. So an IT presence of some kind to keep that information flowing.
Thank you.
Tell us how you feel you would fit into our organization.
I think I would be a good fit from the standpoint that I've spent a good portion of my life in smaller communities. I mean, the city of Mount Pleasant is 25,000, so obviously it's larger than this community, but it's not massive. It's not massive. I grew up in Port Huron and lived out in the townships, and so that's where I kind of had my formative years out there. I was a township official for a very small township right on Lake Huron. So I think I understand the smaller community. I appreciate the more camaraderie, if you will, in the smaller community. And the ability to walk down the street and see the results of a project that you actually worked on and help to provide something for the benefit of your citizens. If this was Grand Rapids, you could see that, you could say that, but you're not going to see it to the same scale. So in other words, if we had a project in downtown Grand Rapids that we were working on, and at the end of the day you could say, yeah, we worked on that and we were a benefit for the community, did that really have the same impact in that large a community as it did in the smaller community? And my argument would be no, it doesn't. That the projects that you do here locally, and you do well locally, impact your citizens on a daily basis to a greater degree because you're a smaller community. So that the impact to the people, and to see that result on a daily basis.
All right, what distinguishing characteristics do you bring to the table?
My communication, my ability for good open discussion, You ask me a question, I'll give you an answer. You may not like it all of the time, to be fair, but if that's the nature of the question, you have every right to disagree, but I don't make policy. The board makes policy, the council makes policy. But you need to know all sides. You need to know all sides of the issue. And so the ability to provide you with options, whatever the issue is, you have choice A, B, and C. What more information do you need? But team building as well. I think if you look at my career, there's a good amount of collaboration, of team building, and the ability, my educational background and my work with Extension, that for the last 4.5 years, I have taught classes on government operation to government officials. So the point is that Extension was asked to come in and provide these educational opportunities for city councils, township boards, county boards of commissioners on how to be officials in those various roles. And so that expertise, if you will, to do that. And it comes from experience in actual government, and it also comes from my educational experience with my bachelor's and my master's.
Okay. What issues do you feel would be the most challenging in this position, and how would you work through those issues?
The things that are always challenging when you come to a new position is learning exactly how this particular council does things, because they're all different. It's not that one's right and one's wrong, they're not. It's just they're all different. So I may be used to doing something a certain way, and if I didn't ask that question, you may not want it in that fashion. And I'll give you one quick example. When I first went into the city of Mount Pleasant, one of my staff members started working on a report. She didn't tell me what she was working on. She spent 2.5 days diligently, almost 9 to 5 each day, working on all of this, writing, calculating, presenting, formatting. She got all done. She came in and she presented it to me and said, here, this is the report that I always prepare at this time of year. And it's like, oh, wonderful. Appreciate that very much, but why didn't you ask me about it? And she's like, well, my previous supervisors just wanted me to do it. And I said, I do need it, but you spent all that work because the new computer program that we just implemented 3 months ago will do that in like 6 keystrokes. It's like, it will? I said, yes, it will. And so the ability, make sure that you know what it is that you're being asked to do, the expectation, so that you have that good conversation up front, so that I'm not assuming that the council wants something a certain way and that not be correct. So that I'm wasting everybody's time, your time and mine. So have that good open communication as well.
There will be interaction with the department managers. What strategies do you use that are most effective to help build consensus within the team?
The thing that's most important is you have a good discussion right up front and agree on what the goals and objectives are. What's the policy that we're trying to achieve? And we develop a timeline for that. And so the point is that all of those individuals are part of the team, and their opinion is valued, and you want them to be part of the contribution. So that at the end of the day, it's not person A's way of doing it or person B's way of doing it solely, unless there was consensus of doing that. Because most of the time I found in my career that once you've got all these different views coming down the line, what everybody's going to agree to, and probably the most important manner in which this goal is achieved, is somewhere in between. It might lean one way or the other, but it's not generally going to be option A or option B, usually when that's first presented on the table. That there's going to be some discussion, there's going to be, well, did you know option A has several flaws to it? It's like, no, I didn't know that. What are those? And then you get that good discussion going on. Without that, the thing with you have to avoid that you're falling into is, well, this is the way we've always done it. And, well, that may have worked 20 years ago, but things have changed, technology has changed. I know one unit of government that was their answer when they were told they needed to do the special assessments in a different way. It's like, well, this is how we've always done it. Well, they were doing it on an Excel spreadsheet. Well, that's nice, and that worked. It's better than doing it by hand, but on the same token, there's computer programs that will do that. So you need to have that discussion and that information exchange so that everybody understands all the nuances of it. And I think you'll build that consensus and once everybody's had that chance of input. And know their opinion is important and is being heard.
All right.
Describe your work style and how it would fit into a busy and demanding municipality office environment.
I believe in a team approach and I believe in a hands-on approach. As I said before in an earlier question, I've not asked anyone in my staff to do anything that I was not willing to do myself or assist with that particular project. So I think the hands-on approach, the open door, if you have a question, if the door's shut, it's because I'm on the phone. It's not that I don't want to hear you or hear your views or anything like that. So the door literally is always open, and figuratively it's always open. But if it's closed, then there's a privacy reason for that. The rest of the time it's a completely open door policy. Any employee, in my view, any employee has the right to speak to the city manager if that's appropriate. I know there's some organizations, and this was the old silo approach in Mount Pleasant, that if you were in public works and you needed to speak to someone in finance, you had to literally go up the chain to get permission to go over, get permission from the finance director to go back down again to talk to the person in the treasurer's office you needed to talk to, and which was absolutely ridiculous. They should have that opportunity just to communicate, because the whole goal is you're trying to solve a problem, and you don't want to add additional bureaucracy to it and additional roadblocks to it.
Thank you.
Okay, we're on question 19,
Okay,
so we're almost there.
almost.
All right. As of March 2020, COVID-19 has had a direct effect on how daily business is carried out. What changes did you make to safety protocol because of COVID-19? What is important to you regarding daily municipality activities and operations, and being able to move forward with continued safety for the community and city staff?
My experience with COVID is we went 100% online, literally overnight. In the time frame that you mentioned, I was with MSU Extension, and we had already completed our plan of work for the year. It included many programs that were to be done face-to-face, but with the safety protocols that came into place, all programming, face-to-face programming, was barred by the university, and we were completely, and actually we were sent home as well. So I worked for about a year and a half at home. Fortunately, I had a home office. I know some of my colleagues weren't as fortunate. So in my case, I didn't miss a beat. The computer and the things, the screens and all the paraphernalia for the computer setup came home. And we also retooled every single one of the programs from face-to-face to online. That is not an easy task, to change 100% face-to-face programming to online. I know local units have been allowed to go online through the Open Meetings Act, through the changes from the state legislature, which was completely the right thing to do. But being online also has its own unique set of circumstances and issues. Now that we're reaching a point now, I believe that December 31st, the emergency authorization ends, and so next January, the expectation is all units of government will be back in place. The biggest challenge to that is going to be the general public, because the public is now used to being able to sit at home, watch on Zoom, and also participate on Zoom. And my understanding of what the legislature has said in that act is that's not going to be allowed any longer as of the end of the year. Now unless that's changed, but that was the last that I was aware of. So one of the biggest changes for local units of government is going to be that educational program, because as you well know, if the public has a complaint, the first place they come is here, even though it's a state law. They won't contact their legislatures or their senators, they'll come and complain to their local officials. That you did this to me, and in reality you did not. You're following the state law. So there needs to be some type of an educational program. If it's appropriate, from health department guidelines, you know, we can continue to do social distancing if that's appropriate. Some units have, you know, this is a good sized room, but some units have smaller rooms. Some have much larger rooms. So depending on the nature of the facility. If it's a situation where there's a meeting that you expect a large public turnout, then arrangements should be made to move it out of this room into someplace else so you can keep the distancing for that. But education for the public, I think, is going to be the biggest issue, because they've gotten used now to being in their comfort zone at home and being able to participate and attend meetings.
Thank you.
Okay, and I have a scenario for you to work through.
Sure.
Two department managers give you the priority projects at the same time, with the same deadline. How would you handle this situation?
Okay. First off, I would get all three of us together and we would have a conversation about, for one, who established the deadlines? Are these carved in stone from the standpoint, are these statutory deadlines? Or are these deadlines that you, the department head, created? And if you are the authority creating the deadline, then give me the documentation or the rationale as to why this is the deadline. If they're both statutory, then we follow through on it and we do what's necessary to get them both done at the same time if they're state laws that's being implemented. But again, if these are departmental deadlines, then we need to have that discussion as to where they're coming from. Is there a feature in the decision making for the deadline as to why it's the date that it is? So in other words, was the department head A is given information and they established the deadline, same thing with department head B, but whose information is more reliable and more accurate? And if we can do them as close to as possible, that's fine. You know, this isn't them and, you know, we and they, it's us together. But on the same token, if push comes to shove, and then you have to make a decision. You have to make a decision, but everybody needs to be part of that process so that they understand, if I decide that A has got priority, then there's a reason for it, and Department Head B will have been part of that discussion, so we'll know why it's there.
Thank you.
All right, we have another scenario. It's a little bit long, so if you need to repeat, just let me know.
Sure.
It's 8 a.m. and you've just arrived at the office. There's a voicemail for you from a resident that is upset over the current water sewer rates and has had a water main break over the weekend that has not been completely fixed. The resident has mentioned in the voicemail that they will be calling the local newspaper to have a reporter come out and do a story on the subject. How do you handle the situation?
Well, if the press shows up, then you certainly will have to have a conversation with the press. But one, I would want to get, you said it's a water main break?
Yes.
Okay, then the superintendent, the water superintendent, I would get with the water superintendent, we would go out and just see what is going on here, specifically to that particular person. And then also try and determine, did you, superintendent, know that this was coming? And if so, why was it not followed through on? You know, I'm not trying to find blame here, I'm trying to solve a problem. If you did not know, and it's unforeseen, then we need to explain that to the property owner, that this was an unforeseeable thing. If the property owner is constantly complaining to the water department about a particular thing, and the water department has investigated that particular issue, then they needed to do a better job going forward of explaining that to the property owner. That yes, we've heard you, and we've investigated, and we have reached a conclusion that it is different than what you're suggesting. However, in this case, it sounds like that even if they did that, they would have been wrong if the main had actually broken. So one thing would be, how foreseeable was this? And also, and the reason I say that, is there a timetable in place for maintenance and replacement of lines? And the reason I ask for, the reason I say it in that way is where I live, the water main broke about 3 houses down because the city had not maintained that particular line. And so that caused problems up and down the street. And the reason for that is there had not been a proper maintenance schedule. So it might not be something that, I mean, we're gonna have to put the fire out right now, dealing with the public and the person and dealing with the press, but just be straightforward about it. You know, in this particular case, all the protocols were followed. Or if we discover that the protocols were not followed, then we explain, you know, we made a mistake. They were not followed, and we will do better. And we're implementing additional measures to make sure that this doesn't happen again. So it's not, we're not pointing fingers at the property owner, we're not pointing fingers at anybody. What we gotta do, first off, we gotta plug the hole. You know, that's the emergency. So you're not flooding this person out. But once that level of emergency is passed, then we get into the weeds a little bit and discover, how did this happen? Was this something where we completely fumbled the ball on? Or did we do our due diligence and this was unforeseeable? And then we develop a protocol moving forward from that.
Thank you.
All right, last question. What would your past boss, supervisor, city council, mayor say about your work ethic?
I think if you can ask them, and also, let me, if I may, the mayor.
Yes.
Yes, if I may give these to you.
Yes, you absolutely may.
These are 6 letters of recommendation that came in after the application was already submitted that will answer that question very well. But if you take a look at those, I think you'll see that my colleagues and my past supervisor would say I have a very strong work ethic, that I'm a very knowledgeable individual, that if I tell you I'm going to do something, I will, and that I will provide you quality service, I will provide you quality education on a topic. If I don't know the answer, I will go find out, and that I'm very, very straightforward and direct in dealing with elected officials, staff members, and the general public. And lastly, Bill Merdeza here is the Community Economic Development Director, and he's even said in there that there's been many occasions where he's seen that there was issues dealing with the public, that they were very upset, but after talking to me and learning about how the whole process worked, they were satisfied with the answer, and they were satisfied that they were being treated fairly, and there was a resolution to their concern. So I think these will speak to that, but in general, you know, a good solid work ethic, good open communication, and the ability to follow through. If I tell you I'm going to give you something on Tuesday, then on Tuesday you'll have it.
Thank you.
All right. We're on our last page.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So is there anything else job-related that would be important for us to know when considering whether to hire you over another qualified candidate?
I think I bring a unique mix to the city manager position. I have over 25 years' experience in local government on a day-to-day basis. Most of that, 21 years of that, was with the city of Mount Pleasant, which is a very diverse community, and is more diverse and more unique than many other communities in Michigan simply because of the nature of it. It's the county seat, it's the home of Central Michigan University, so it has a large, unique feel to it. It also experiences its own growing pains. When I first went to Central Michigan, I got both my degrees from Central Michigan University. So it was quite ironic that I worked for the city. When I first went to Central as an undergrad in 1978, it was a very rural feel to the community. And that's what the public liked, that's what they wanted. But as time went on, it became more urban. And so Mount Pleasant struggled with that point that I was making, trying to balance that hometown feel with the urbanization and the growing of the community. So I've experienced a lot of unique features in my career. And then also I have my bachelor's and my master's education to fall back on. So I've seen actual things in use. I've also seen what the professors tell us how it should be. And then I've seen in many cases where that's not really how it works. So I give a very practical side to a city manager position.
All right. Lastly, do you have any questions or additional information you would like to share with us at this time?
Just a couple of things real briefly, just you all introduced yourselves very well.
Yes.
So let me just share just real briefly on that.
Okay.
As I said, I'm originally from Port Huron, and I appreciate the history side of it, especially, as I said, the Civil War veteran out there, because the Civil War veteran is the reason I'm here. My great-great-grandfather was a Civil War veteran from the state of New York and brought the family to Michigan after the war. He got a land grant. He was a farmer. And so that's why he got into the thumb, and that's why my family ended up in Port Huron. My wife and I have 4 children, and I'm proud to say that our first granddaughter was born last year. So we have Emmeline is now a year old. The kids are all adults. Megan is the only one that's married. Her and her husband have Emmeline, but they're scattered all over the country. I say they text me because Megan and Sean are in Texas. Chris is in Colorado, and we have twin sons. David is here in Michigan, but Tom is in Washington. Tom works for the federal government. So we see 3 of them maybe once a year. So it's a unique feature of that. And I spent my entire career in local government. A little bit later start. I was 29 when I started. I know other people started earlier than that, but I spent most of my entire career in local government, and most of it in the city. And then lastly, a question. The most substantial question would be, I would respectfully ask, what does the council see as the #1 issue going forward into the next 6 months, 8 months, a year?
Sure.
What do you see as the #1 issue for the community?
Our longstanding #1 issue has been infrastructure.
Okay.
Water, sewer, wastewater treatment plant is aged. We've just completed our master plan on that.
Okay.
We have water mains that are 100 years old, and really no idea of how to fund because we are not an impoverished community. So that's the biggest challenge that I see continuing to move forward. Somebody that is knowledgeable of grants and seeking out opportunities and looking for funding, so as not to always have to burden a tax base. That is what I would say our #1 is. Second would be growth and new business opportunity in our industrial park, and also the exit right out here on 96. We are the last vacant exit, so to speak, between Brighton and the west side of Lansing. We did have our firm, before we released them, do an overview of what each of those exits look like. We modified our zoning ordinances to be more desirable, more business friendly, commercial friendly out there. So looking into that, trying to attract businesses into that area. So those are our 2 top, I would believe.
And that goes with what I said earlier, is Williamston is very typical of smaller communities, because those are the types of things, the infrastructure in particular, your aging water and sewer. Mount Pleasant, we had to replace the wastewater plant. We partnered originally with Union Township, and so it reached a point where it made sense that the partnership ended and both communities had their own. But originally that was together. The other point I would just ask on that, you mentioned the industrial. Do you make use of IFTs on any scale? Okay,
Yes, we do.
good.
So, yeah, so we have a TIFA, 2A, 2B
Okay.
out there. We have a DDA, for the downtown district. The challenge, with the vacant parcels out at the industrial park is they are small.
Mm-hmm,
And so typically when, somebody's looking for a site, it would be, purchasing multiple parcels in order to get the, property size that they would
Okay.
want. Most of the parcels are owned by a commercial entity, so they are not owned directly by the city. And so that's a challenge too.
sure, sure.
I'm not sure if you're familiar with LEAP, which is Lansing Economic Area Partnership, but
I've heard of it.
we,
Heard of it.
and, yeah, we are partners with them. They do promote and market us to the
Okay,
best of their
yep.
ability when there's new entities that are looking to come into this tri-county area. Because we are the east gateway of Ingham County,
Mhm.
going down into the capital area. So, yeah, that would be,
Okay.
a challenge for the city manager, think of new creative ways
Sure.
to bring in more tax revenue.
We partnered with MMDC for
Okay,
the same idea, Middle Michigan Development Corporation. And they work to fill the industrial park. Industrial Park South is pretty well full. There's a couple of parcels that are vacant. Industrial Park North, there's a couple parcels up there. The one that is problematic in Mount Pleasant is the University Park, and hence by the name you probably can believe it belongs to Central Michigan University. So we actually had 3 industrial parks in Mount Pleasant, and the University Park was very problematic because everything had to be approved by the Board of Trustees of the university. And they had their own set of rules, they had their own agenda. And the last thing I'll say about it is I tried very hard to explain to them, you cannot grow the tax base by putting exempt entities in the industrial park. They just didn't understand that. It's a beautiful facility, but it's exempt by definition of law. Therefore, you're not going to generate any tax dollars out of that. And the only other question is, do you have a time frame that you're
Sure.
going to make your decisions on
Yeah.
how you want to proceed?
so that was actually gonna be, my closing statement,
Great.
is our process as
Great.
we move forward. So this evening completes the interviews of the first round.
Mhm.
So we will come together, we'll review our applicants, and then we will let our clerk, Holly, Ms. Thompson, who
Mhm.
probably contacted you,
Yes.
reach out to the applicants that we would like to bring back for second round interviews,
Mhm.
which would be the week, not next week because it's a short week because of Thanksgiving.
Yes.
So the following week, those interviews will take place either the 29th, 1st, or the 2nd,
Okay.
depending on the number of candidates that we bring back. We'll go through a series of questions again, but it will be, it will have more flexibility. Every single candidate was asked the identical questions
Mhm.
and we did not branch off of these questions. So the second round of questions will be more casual, relaxed, more flexibility for us to ask. More interactive,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
Because we want to get a base.
Sure.
And so then that next opportunity to come in. After that's done, we'll make our ideal selection. And I would say that it would probably be the month of December that process moves
Mhm.
forward with background checks, contract offered. I could see city manager starting, kick it off, the new year.
January, yeah.
January.
Okay.
So, I don't know if we'd be able to move it faster, the holidays.
Oh,
I
I
don't
know.
wanna impose on
No,
somebody's
no,
holidays,
no.
especially with family and travel and,
Sure.
all of those moving parts. So I would suspect that the new city manager would start shortly after the first of the year.
Mhm. Yeah, I would agree with you that the holidays, Thanksgiving and Christmas,
Yes.
usually the last 2 weeks of December,
Yes,
you're not gonna get much
Right.
response of it, and
Yeah.
I know most of the city staff took off as much as possible, so.
sure. So that's where that's the process that we're moving forward with. And so I just wanted to say thank you so much for being able to be here this evening. Enjoyed meeting you
My pleasure.
and getting to know you through the series of questions that we had.
All right, well, thank you for the opportunity, I enjoyed it.
Absolutely,
Thanks,
thank
sir.
you.
And let me just give you these.
Yes,
to
absolutely,
add-
thank you so much, and I'll make
Add
sure
to the
that Holly is able to copy those and give them to us as members for review.
Great, thank
Appreciate
you.
it, thank you. So right now, I will go ahead and call a short recess for about 5 minutes. All right, so I would just like to, before we close our meeting for this evening, I just would like to let our viewing public know that our additional 2 candidates that had been scheduled for this evening have withdrawn their candidacy. So this evening concludes our first round of interviews for the city manager position. And at this time, we will go ahead and adjourn for the evening at 6:41.